Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Alrighty, I have a controversial one this morning. That's really controversial. Very difficult to speak about, but it must be spoken about. And it's not really in my it's not a personal kind of defensive thing. It is it's like an exposure of unspoken factors, unspoken variables at play in these very crucial times of societal reflection. And so there needs to be a disclaimer, so you know I'm serious because I never give a disclaimer. My intention in anything I'm about to say is not intended to normalize, or celebrate, or or take anything away from, alleged victims or anything. It's just to paint a picture that is completely unsatisfactory. The reality of the picture is unsatisfactory for actually achieving anything lasting. And unfortunately, it is extremely short-sighted, and it is extremely hypocritical, and self-protective of a huge class of individuals across the world. So basically, I'm going to delve into my opinions regarding some of the phenomenon going on with this Epstein thing, and then in lieu of that, in the same time. But first of all, I'm saying I have the benefit of living in a different era. Just in a different era, under different circumstances, with different privileges, and not just different response, all the things. So I am speaking from a position, kind of protected by circumstances, which is, and I don't want to use those circumstances, overly and distastefully to my advantage, because I feel like that would be the wrong thing to do. It's like, my intention is to protect the reputations of thousands of years of British history, and to not have it swallowed up by such a simple, card trick. Although, if all of this leads to real societal change through all classes and ethnicities and groups, and that's a positive. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to tell the accurate story, but I'm not trying to take us back to something if we are clearly on a new route to something different, or a new route to something different. But there are a few things that aren't being discussed. So it is very, 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 very common within the circles that these characters, these individuals were circling in, for women to, be throwing their coin in the ring anyway. And I'd say the two cases that are not being expanded enough in any of the documentation, any of the reporting, any of the journalist stuff that I've seen, is the tendency of both mothers and of peers, of friends, to initiate women into this cycle, almost like it is akin to like the lottery. Okay. And what what I believe, like I listened intently to a couple of victim statements yesterday. And what I can't help but see in this exposure, see, it's not, it's being framed as exposure of these crimes of pedophilia, of sex trafficking, and look, it is okay, but there is a kind of dual-handed exposure going on. Okay, so how can I dig my way into this? Probably to start, I'm going to tell an anecdotal story about my first exposure. I was probably 12 or 13. My first exposure to hardcore pornography. Okay, this isn't intended to incriminate anyone or discredit anyone, and so I'll keep all the names secret. But my neighbours' parents had pornography in their closet, and I was friends with their children, and we went to watch that, and I remember the feeling being absolutely overwhelming. And this is absolute. What's it called? Absolute testimony, not designed to do anything else, and not designed to shield myself or big up myself, anything like that. It's just the truth. I wouldn't necessarily describe it as an overly positive thing. It led to that, because I was right at the cusp of puberty, all these things. But I just remember it being very intense, very like confronting, very like hyper stimulating. Like it was like, I would compare it pretty much the same as drugs that I've experienced, especially stimulant drugs. And that was that. So it's like this exists, and I'm guessing that this exists. And I would actually say, like, the perception is that this exists more so for women. Okay. Now, the other perception, the other inclusion that we have to make is that this is a kind of rite of passage that the vast, almost all majority of human beings will have to make at some point, whether it is simulated, whether it is, I'm not going to say that, whether it's simulated, whether it's for the right reason, like no matter what, being exposed to, that is a leap. Okay. Now, I believe that the masculine world, so this is coming from a masculine world, which young men do grow up in an environment that is more encouraging towards sexual exploration, traditionally. Okay. Now we are in an experiment where women are being exposed to the same level. This started well before I was born, and so that, I'm just saying that's what it is. But I don't think there's ever been a thing where it's like, okay, that even for men, that is and even simulated, quite an intense moment. You know what I mean? And like that was, luckily, I suppose, from my case, it was, naughty kids sneaking around in the closet and pulling out some things and watching it. And I remember my heart rate was fucking out here. So it's like that's the best case scenario. But you can imagine the input of other factors into that would lead, that's a sliding, it goes all the way up to absolute atrocity, to like, physical and like aggressive and violent rape, I suppose, but no matter what, you are still being hyper exposed to the event that you will inevitably be exposed to. And what I feel is happening to do with women, I feel like adult women for 50 or 60 years have been pushing at the top levels in adulthood, okay, through their own experiences that are under-explained, okay? So you can guarantee every sexually active adult woman has their own version of that story that I just told about pornography, but it more than likely doesn't involve pornography, okay? Now let's call that like X, okay? That X is majoritively undisclosed and culturally underexposed, culturally under-discussed. Okay, it's almost like there's a grace period between women, say, 13, which I'm saying I was 13 when I was exposed to pornography. I won't say against my will, but like exposed to pornography, under the supervision of older children or something like that. And that's probably pretty common. I'm not making a claim. So there is a grace period, an undisclosed grace period of all women, and especially women in power, say between 13 and I would actually say, 22, of undisclosed sexual activity. Undisclosed, and then they hit about 22, and then they become, within this reinforced environment, they get then socially encouraged and reinforced to celebrate women's liberty, to celebrate women's, expression and women's freedom of sexual whatever. To the points like women now are, especially this cohort, women 22 to say 60. Let's put 60 on the other side. They are now experimenting with all the so-called sexual liberation that men, were perceived to have been participating in. But the largest thing here that is being under discussed is that it's the oldest thing in the book. It takes two to tango. Okay. Now, environmentally, socially, on a global marketplace, and I'm not even at the stage of talking about actual remuneration in money. I'm just talking, in metaphor, the global marketplace for sexual activity was the first to be globalized. And we can see this, proven by pornography. Okay. So we have a globalized sexual marketplace, both economically and just socially. This is, this traditionally, we had this before. We had it was called slavery. So immediately there, we're being exposed to normalization of sexual slavery on a global marketplace where arbitrage is muddying the waters of consent and muddying the waters of reinforced social, norms and things like that. Again, this isn't being discussed. We have a cohort of women between 22 and 60 celebrating radical, like extreme sexual liberation, but not failing to take responsibility for the results of that, the on-flow effects. And I think most grievous of all, reinforcing this kind of this dark, hidden realm of the true reality of their lived sexual experiences from 13 to 22. It's like, and basically, if we're at the point now, we're having a global conversation, and again, I'm not trying to, I'm not even trying to defend any of the people that are clearly criminals in this, that have been profiteering from this phenomenon or from this crime. And this is the thing. It's like, if we are now at the stage where we're calling it a crime, okay, we have a criminal, wasn't traditionally a criminal, was traditionally, like in the highest manifestation, could potentially be, a massive windfall for your family. So it's like, it is not uncommon in our history, nor anyone else's history. We're not unique in this. This exists, this existed in Africa and in everywhere else. This and it's still going on in some things. But it's like if you were a 13-year-old girl and you were, arranged with a wealthy thing, that's like you had your whole family, the whole system, every single thing supporting that. You weren't directly being paid for it. You were being remunerated by the thing. But it's like your whole family was influencing you in that behavior, and that's been going on nonstop for all of humankind. So, like, it to me, it's pretty clear to say it's like whatever Epstein was doing, it could best be described as socialized hypergamy. So, like socialism, communist hypergamy. It takes. Say the most grand example of you get, so the future king, Prince of Wales, okay, and you align him with a 13-year-old arranged partnership. For the majority of all human history, that has been celebrated. Okay, now that's from the male perspective and a little bit from the female perspective. So there is a supply and demand curve of both. If you lower that level, what you get, if you try and broadcast that model so that everybody gets their Prince Charming and everybody gets their prince, and their suitor, their Cinderella or whatever, which, you can't hide the fact is we've all been distributed Disney movies where the first 10 and the most popular all involve a young princess and a hapless prince or whatever, like matching up. So but that would have still existed. So it's not like I'm not blaming Disney. I'm saying Disney is the proof of this concept being, at the pinnacle of socially reinforced archetypes and behavior. Okay. And then we live in a world of increasing distributed capitalist flow of value-added products. This is why it's like, literally, if you wanted to eat Mexican food, you would have had to have gone to Mexico at the turn of the century. Even in the 1950s, like our old El Paso, that's not Mexican. That's mass-produced Mexicana. Okay, so this is like this marketplace exposure applies the same to this, like either sexual trafficking, marital trafficking, or just socially reinforced matchmaking services. This existed. Now, what seems to have happened? It's like this cohort of 22 to 60. Within their newly found freedoms of expression of sexual freedom and liberty, which the main thing you need to know here is like those women, their access and experience of sexual liberation is very different to what the men were, to what they perceived the men were doing. Like they created their archetype and their life, their reinforced, female high standard of freedom based on hearsay and gossip of hypersexual men, with the added benefit of increased, even compared to like aristocracy and things, like a hyper demand onto them. So it's like if I was in a commodity basis, like we had a culture that kept sexual liberation down, so the value of women went up. Okay, and this is what led to these ultimate matches, because everyone was just on eggshells and doing these things. You couldn't do anything. So it's like that's what's the strength of Cinderella is. If there is a million Cinderellas running around, jumping on every prince that there is, and everyone who resembles a prince under the fucking wine-filled moonlight, then it changes the whole dynamic. This would be the same as say I bought a piece of land and I started mining and I found the mother lode of emeralds, but just started distributing them. I would completely destroy the emerald market. And it's like, this is what women's sexual liberation has done. It has completely destroyed the female, marital marketplace. Destroyed it, perhaps irreparably. And it is caused this shadow marketplace to exist in the still unspoken about. And this happened, like I have quite a lot of experience with women, and over the years, just in chit chat, and again, I won't name anyone, the things that I have gleaned from women, especially regarding their teenage years, their early teenage years, is completely not aligned with what the broadcast, status and going and behavior of young women is. It is not. It is completely different. There is a shadow, there is a shadow industry, and then there is a shadow societal norm, or there has been, between this age group of 13 to 22. There is not a doubt in my mind about this. Now, the problem is that this probably existed, but it was kept in check by very rigid societal etiquette and customs. Okay. Now, there more than likely was a kind of cultural arbitrage going on, just the same as there is now a ethnical arbitrage going on and a geographical arbitrage going on, because there is now a global marketplace for all of this. And this is well known. It isn't just fucking Epstein and Prince Andrew and things. Like, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of sex tourists traveling all around the world to the third world countries to participate in atrocious behavior, across the entire spectrum across the entire menu board. If you were to get down to that, if you're Ray Kroc, building the McDonald's franchise of prostitution, it's like, he's done very well. It's just there isn't a single individual, there isn't a brand. It's a cultural tsunami of acceptability and of obscurement on the female side. So yes, men will always have a huge target on them of blame. I'm not trying to take that away. Men are to blame, okay? But the problem is, the most important thing for us to do right now, it's like this cohort of women aged 22 to 60, and actually let's up that, because it's not 60. My mother is just as responsible. Let's call that 80, I think. Okay. From 22 to 80 is radically responsible for this cohort of abuse happening between 13 to 22. Almost every single cultural artifact or cultural protocol of courting and selection has been completely destroyed. And this is the thing. It's like this now, because it has been so normalized. You can ask any woman from 22 to 80. So what should a young woman be doing, dating wise, between 13 to 22? And they'll be like, oh, they should be out partying. And it's like, this word partying is the main thing. I don't even think that's how you spell partying. I have a little bit of dyslexia, so I don't know whether that's how you spell partying. Partying. Anyway. Now, partying at the turn of the century was a very stuck up, very, it's a very different thing. Partying now is a global marketplace of inebriated women, half naked, getting blackout drunk and on drugs, dancing under hypnotic fucking lights while being, hit on by a bunch of, equally as reckless spending and irresponsible young men who both is encouraged across the entire landscape of that. Now, there's only one thing to blame for that, and that's PR and marketing. That was not the case. And so what we have a selective outrage going on. A selective outrage of a hyper-stimulated phenomenon. I would say a hyper-stimulating, culturally declining phenomenon that has had trillions of dollars spent on it. Okay, for a very trillions and trillions of dollars, and it has two main weapons. It has the normalization of sexual liberation, which I would say I would majoritively put the blame of that in that women cohort between 22 and 80. The mass distribution of alcohol, the mass distribution of drugs, and the mass distribution of the contraceptive pill. Leave that contraceptive pill on the fucking shelf for a little second, because there's an obvious kind of conclusion that we all might start getting to when we understand that has taken place. This experimental female population around the world between 22 and 80 has been experimenting radically with the use of female hormones, okay, and sexual liberation, through the lens of a materialist, capitalist party industry. And then there is now being selective outrage towards the obvious, and it's basically like they go, well, we can't do the king, although some people are trying. It's like, has to be the king's brother. And the thing is, it's like, of course it's the king's brother. Like, of course, what? Did they have a crystal ball? The world was dragged through this party. Their responsibility is to keep the whatever, and they're extremely wealthy. And the divorces are unacceptable. The marriages, the fucking, the dating young women is unacceptable. All this, it's like, this is inevitable. All of this is inevitable. And it is selective outrage in a period of time that is too short. And it is never addressing the largest things in the room, which is the contraceptive pill and the absolute normalization of sexual liberation of women that are older. And now that we're getting to the point, it's like we're not at the point yet where we're calling the proprietors, or not the proprietors, the girls. We're not, and this is the other thing, they're not all girls. Okay. So we're not at the stage yet where we're calling the masseuses. We're not calling them criminals yet, for some reason. And so we are selectively outraged at the men, the clients, despite the fact that there are, for every one client going home with an underage woman in Epstein's empire, there is 600,000 going home with an underage woman somewhere else in the world and not remunerating her. Okay? And the protocol we are using now to try and shift, public perception of this, and to I don't know, because that's like, for back in my day, we would have, and the first time I've said that in a long time, it's like we would have social, we're trying to shift, we're trying to protect victims before they become victims. We're trying to denormalize the behavior. But we're not doing that. We're broadcasting this around the world. We're rebroadcasting. We're resetting the board that should never have been there. That's what there is an attempt to do right now. And this is because billions and billions and trillions of dollars are invested in this partying fucking landscape that is not, it's not what it was before. It's like the only people that had parties were royals and things like that. There was like party, but it's like in the way, like careless kind of leisure. But even that, you're going through a socially reinforced like gauntlet that was designed to kind of to elevate certain behaviors or certain attributes of the court through to the king. Like that's what that's designed to do. The partying empire, the 24/7 dance fucking fueled party is only designed to do one thing. It's to get young women raped and to sell alcohol and to occupy, young, retarded, violent, ultra violent, fucking ultra aggressive, reckless young men, and to extract them for their money. That's it. It's the opposite of what a royal court was. We can't be in a world where it's like, okay, let's snap out of it now. Let's just imagine, right, all of this under the bridge, all of this, right, goes, it changes, and it's like Prince William has one choice really to make to cover up, or to undo all the damage his uncle caused, even though it's not his uncle, it's the entire fucking world. So it's like, okay, he establishes a royal court, he has a royal party with all the same etiquettes and traditions, and then he matches people up in the same thing, and we end up with a bunch of marriages that will tilt towards older men, hooking up with younger women. And why? Well, because this is like the Epstein curtain. So if you imagine it's the end of the Epstein era, basically, and the curtain is closing. Okay? If you are in a cohort of 22 to 80, when the Epstein curtain closes, it's never going to open again. You are, not solely, but very significantly responsible for normalizing and keeping secret this, this thing. Like that's, and just to get to the basic of it, it's like, now that it's a crime, okay, it's all hiding in this taboo, politically incorrect thing of, and again, I'm not trying to blame the victims. Even that, you'd be like, oh, look at the way he said victims. He doesn't even think they are victims. So I do think they're victims, but they're not victims of either the clients or of Epstein. They're victims of cultural decline. And that is an all-in game. But that has majoritively, elevated the wants and the status of that cohort of women, all of them, especially white women between 22 to 80 that have benefited from both contraception, like social welfare systems, all the things, sexual liberty, sexual marketplace, now being, a hot talking point, an acceptable talking point where these women are described as entrepreneurs, as long as they're 22 to 80. Then everyone younger. And this is the thing, it's like the highest levels of criminals in every other field, whether they're drug dealers or murderers or extortionists or blackmailers or terrorists or anything else, it has the same distribution. It has the men 22 to 80, and they have benefited from their criminal behavior, and they actively and openly promote younger people from 13 to 22. And this is like, where's this example being seen the best of? Well, the Tate brothers. They're following the exact, basically what the Tate brothers are doing is exactly what the Sex and the City girls were doing. It's exactly what like what Disney was doing, but for men, and it's not unacceptable and distasteful. But all they're doing is mirroring the exact thing that cohort of women have been doing. And this is the thing as well. It's like you've got to remember that women are mothers. We're supposed to listen to our mothers. We're supposed to follow what our mothers tell us is the world. And mostly we do. There's a really good scene in this new Louis Theroux thing about, and I'm only halfway through it, but it's very cleverly done. And this big chauvinist kind of misogynist guy, con artist, is basically doing this thing. He's saying, "Oh," and then Louis goes, "Well, what would your mum think?" He's like, "Oh, my mum wouldn't like it. I wouldn't tell her. Yeah, she doesn't accept it." And instantly, this bravado fucking turns into a little boy. You know, I would argue that it's like you're not a man until you've told your mum that she's an idiot, especially in an absolutely out of control, declining, social norm. That's your only job. The next job after that is to tell your father. And I just don't. It's like I did, but I didn't have to fully do it because my father died because he was a lot older. And this is the other thing I know, that it's like there was this going on in the older generation, the wartime generation before the boomers. But I would say at approximately maybe 5% max of this Epstein era. 5%. So that's a 95% increase in reckless, debaucherous, fucking, irresponsible, reckless partying, promotion, and behavior, which by its design normalizes hypersexual activity in 13 to 22-year-olds, which the majority of those victims are ushered into that environment by either their mother or a peer. So it is a female reinforced phenomenon. There will always be an open marketplace for sexually liberal women. That's what drives the 24/7 dance party alcohol distribution services. That is a constant in this equation. But any other criminal activity, it gets treated far differently. There isn't selective outrage. There's a small comparison where young teenage boys quite often get out of crimes. Myself, I was almost killed by 17-year-olds, and not one of them saw any time or anything. They didn't get anything. There was no charge, and I was literally almost beaten to death. And that follows the same trend. It's like it wasn't, and this is actually truly the reason I never pressed charges, was because I knew from lived personal experience that, at least half of those boys who did that would not have been doing it on their own. They were in the heat of, they basically were led by one bad egg or two bad eggs, and it's like, how do I know who they are? And I know the dynamics, and they won't rat their mates out. They won't do it. So it's like, what the fuck? I'm still living, I'm breathing. I don't exactly know. It's like, do I fucking ruin the lives of 10 young men? But that's some weird level shit, isn't it? That's like, I don't regret my decision, but I think there is a really big problem when collectively all members of society are all kind of doing that. And we're stacking upon, moving baseline. And it's where I do get to the things of like, well, my mother's diagnosis for a lifelong, mental illness, which forced her into lifelong pharmaceutical imprisonment and institutional, imprisonment. Her worst crimes, her worst, displays of antisocial behavior are now not even enough to fucking, to tip the fucking view ratings on a TikTok or an Instagram. But she's still in there. This is where it's like this problem is not anything to do with the royal family. This problem is not anything to do with Epstein. Epstein is a high level, distributor of he rode the tsunami, the wave of this normalization that he didn't initiate. It was initiated after the war. And it was initiated by wartime benefits, more than likely taken from Nazi Germany. Now that's a big fucking thing. This is the big elephant in the room. English people, Germans, French and Russians went and raped and created fucking sexual fucking marketplaces after World War II in Germany. And that is what has spread out around the world. It's a normalization of post-war debauchery, post-war rape en masse, post-war. And this is the trans thing there was a liberated trans movement in Berlin, like pre-Nazi Germany. And then this was instituted. This is where the taste came from. This is where the marketplace developed there. They were Germans. They were less than fucking dogs. Not from my perspective, a little bit, but we were down here. We're in Australia. It's a different place. It's a colony. My father was in Tasmania. He was traveling around the world. It's like this wasn't reinforced in my culture. I wasn't the son of a fucking English British naval officer that's duty was to rape the fuck out of every woman in Germany and demoralize the men, most significantly by turning them into women and then raping them too. This is the mentality that created this global mess. Coming from, not the horse's mouth, but from the horse stable boy's mouth, I suppose. I'm just by pure fucking circumstance, I'm close enough to see and far enough away to not be enrolled in any of this. And the dynamics of my parents and things like that are just enough and perfectly, positioned for me to, very extremely push back against this entire industry, this entire normalization, this entire fucking, degradation of society that should have stopped and traditionally would have stopped, at max 10 years after the war. It would have gone back to normal. The Germans would have insulated themselves. They would have bolstered back up. They would have stopped this thing. But what happened is this spread. The people went home. It's like the blues. So rock and roll was an after thing of the blues. So, and this is like basically enslaved or recently liberated, but still basically economically enslaved black guitar player and singers, did this thing during World War II. It was distributed to England, and then this was rock and roll. They were young teenage men imitating this. Now, the only reason they would have been doing that is if they felt the same. So this is and United States. I missed United States in that little rape game. I really did. And they're the most significant force of this. And it's like the victors of that war who got those wartime benefits, they got a taste for it. They got used to it, and they were powerful and they were wealthy because they just won a war. They destroyed all their enemies. They knew that this was thing. It's almost like they've experienced this exotic thing of like rape, And so what did they provide to all the men at home? It's like they provided rape to all the men at home. And then how did they do that to the women? Well, they've got to normalize it. Hey, stop wearing all those corsets and long dresses, honey, and get your tits out and suck my cock. Like, that's John. It's like, that's that period. All the social constraints. It's like, you don't want to be in little old England, old blimey. No, I come here and fucking sit on my lap, honey. Oh yeah. And this, like, it's weird because it's like these people, the Germans committed atrocities, like all of them. The people that liberated Germany, they were heroes. You know what I mean? It's like this. It is not a moral standpoint I'm trying to make. I'm not morally superior. I'd be just as likely to be in any single position, including, now that I can, embrace my feminine side, it's like including the female victims. Not that I was, but I could have been, and I probably would have been. And I can really understand that. And it fits in the exact same thing as every single young man that is in jail, that was imprisoned from age 13 to 22, based on a cultural degradation and a cultural reinforcement of criminal activity, drug dealing, sexual assault, speeding, like driving, reckless driving, all of these things. It is exactly the same. They were led down a fucking destructive path by older men and by the reinforcement of older men. By that being cool. It's like, it's the same. So we have a selective outrage towards victims who are women, despite the fact that they're not all victims. Some of them are recruiting their friends. A lot of them, in this case, particularly the one that I watched the testimony about. And I think the strongest thing is, I believe truly, it's like, I may never have told anyone that story about me watching pornography, especially from the stance of like, from an unempowered stance, because that's not what men do. Men tell empowered stories of the, oh yeah, I fucked her. Oh yeah, we watched porn. It was great. It's like, it's not manly to sit there and say, oh, my heart was beating. It was really intense. I was like scared of the men because they were huge, and it was all these, like, all of that is not an empowered thing to do. And so that's why it's me 40 doing this in a fucking frock or in a whatever top, which I actually really like. I can't wait to lose about 10 kilos and look properly in this. But there is, these are the dynamics at play. And I refuse to allow them to be displayed and hyper promoted, hyper broadcast, and hyper distributed under any other revelation, or with attempting for any other political purpose. Like, this is a top to bottom Western civilizational decline. Triggered by, and this is basically triggered by the end and the atrocities of the Nazis, the end of that, the inevitable retaliation, and then an extension through the newly developed media of television and cinema and United States imperialism and exceptionalism. And it's basically like the United States were exceptionally good at keeping that party going, keeping that rape fucking celebration, the war benefits party going. That's it. But the entire landscape of the world, the intelligence levels, the everything has expanded so much. And the first hit back at this systemic failure of civilization is to selectively outrage and to attack the heads of state, or near enough, his brother. It's like this, and it's just, it's kind of like saying, like, you can imagine, the analogy would be, imagine our urban sprawl here in Western Australia. We've got all these suburban blocks everywhere, right? And it's like, there's, how could I do it? It's almost like if you can imagine a landslide of a hill. There's people on a mountain, right, and they're on this thing, and there's like a status game going on to do with the view of how front facing you are on the mountainside, and there's this like internal, conflict going on between all these people on a mountainside, and then, the people at the back of the mountainside are saying, "I think the whole mountainside is falling," and they're like, "Of course not. You're just jealous because I've got the front view. I've got the really good view, and you're all the way back there." And then it's like all of a sudden the whole mountainside falls down. That's what's happening. This selective outrage is, it's like, look at those, and the funniest thing of all is the exposure of that selective outrage towards like Epstein and Prince Andrew or whatever, Andrew Mountbatten. That selective outrage is just hyper promotion again, which is what has always been there. There's no period on Earth where the second, at one point, second in line to the throne couldn't get a blowjob. Whether he pays for it or not, it doesn't matter, because they're the most hyper promoted family on Earth, and they're still the most hyper promoted family on Earth. There is no such thing as bad press. It's like this. The one thing they're really guilty of, and this is where I do have not in his spirit or in his person. I don't think Prince William is a bad person. I don't think King Charles is a bad person. In fact, I think they're both very good people. But they have extremely misjudged what they should have done in this moment. They have extremely misjudged, and they've been cowardly in their defense of our British norms, and that is unforgivable. You cannot claw your way back from that. They went, but I do not blame them, because they went the stable, safe route for themselves, and you could also argue, and it's for a certain class on Britain. But Britain, unfortunately, is a lot bigger than just that little island. It lives in the hearts and minds of a global population that outpaces that. Even the global influence, like every other nation, is heavily influenced by Britain. So it's just a failure at an epic proportion to stand up and defend the core principles that had been declined throughout their grandmother's reign, who clearly was the initiator of that 22 to 80 age group of sexually liberated women. And I can almost guarantee it's like herself not benefiting from that. So this in no way throws her under the bus. It's like it's a industrial accident. It's the only way to really describe it. It's a socially reinforced, industrialized global accident, and it needs to be treated as such. We need to stop the selective outrage. We need to broadcast our outrage in this moment. We need to find navigational points which are in time and space, and we need to lash our ship to that with everything we've got, and then just watch as the momentum, the inertia, continues a certain, and it will this will slop out, and it'll be like, oh look, no, we're staying here. We didn't realize the whole mountain was sliding. We didn't realize that the tide was coming. What all these things, all the analogies you could possibly think, all the metaphors. I have no doubt that if William was to stick around, he would be a vital contributor to that. That he's just not going to ever escape the cloud that has been placed around him by this selective outrage. And the only way for the crown to survive is to step up back to its pinnacle. and defend defend the core principles of our people against, radically what's the word? Against radically overpowered resistance. Is like where we need to be the candle in the wind that doesn't blow out, to use an absolutely ridiculously corny metaphor to invoke the spirit of Diana and that Elton John song and all these things. It's like we, and not from that standpoint. It's like we've got tunnel vision. We've got hyper focus on the very recent royal history, on the very recent British history, especially in our mainstream media. It's like we need to lasso every king and queen and duke and knight and parliamentarian and advisor and everything from say the 1,000-year history of British history, and we need to link them all together to weather the storm of this industrial global pollution event. Like it's an oil spill. Is the bit, you know what I mean? So like that's the image. It's like it's caused by oil. The wars were caused by oil. It's all driven by oil. So you think of an oil spill, you see those birds covered in black tar and all this shit on the beach, and think of it real when it really hits, the really big ones. And before that, it's always been, it's like, oh, it's them. It's the sea life. It's covered in oil. They're going to die. They're going to suffocate. It's like, no, it's us. It's all of us. The entire island of Britain is covered in an oil spill. The entire coastline of Australia is an oil spill. The entire coastline of Europe, oil spill. Russia, everywhere. This oil spill has spread to everywhere. And it's the only appropriate way to deal with it. You know what I mean? We need to clean the fucking oil off all the birds, basically. And this experiment, which oil is, it's like oil is a very clear experiment. It's such a short experiment. The age of oil is so short. And it is clearly responsible for an unacceptable, elevation in antisocial, in horrific acts of human cruelty, of human, it is the worst thing ever. It's like all you've got to do is imagine the oil spill, and we've always seen that as like we play nice music and there's Greenpeace there toothbrushing the fucking birds off, right? But it's like do that and then have drunk, methed up fucking lunatics beating and raping women on the beach as well. It's like, oh shit. Oh, this oil spill's way worse than the last one. And we've just got to get there. And then we've got to hold courage from there. That's not nice. It's way easier to just stay at the party. And that comes down to the core thing of all these concepts, all the outrage, all the selective outrage towards Diddy parties or Epstein parties, Epstein Island parties. It's like, what's the thing you should do? What is the moral high ground that all of these people failed to do that are being, absolutely broadcast around the world? It's like their moral imperative was to leave the party and report the atrocities to the authorities. And if you didn't do that, you are now being dragged 24/7 through the fucking global media fucking, gauntlet. And it's like, well, we are all at the Epstein party. We are all at the Diddy party. It is covered in oil, not just baby oil, but fucking high quality Texas crude, Middle East fucking Saudi fucking crude. And it is led to not just a couple of birds with a bit of fucking oil on the thing, but it has led to this bloody pile of dead fucking babies and dead fucking rape victims and, destroyed social etiquette systems, destroyed empires, destroyed everything. And, You know what I mean? And that really is the only way to look at it. So there's only one way to solve it. It's not a declining monarch, you know, attempting to hang on to the fucking flotsam and jetsam that's been, you know, ravaged as this oil tanker, you know, mowed down the Queen Mary. Literally. That's a great way to paint it as well. It's like the oil tank, the Exxon Valdez fucking mowed down the Queen Mary, and King Charles is floating on a chest, just trying to tell us that we need to get the oil off the birds. It's like, I know we need to get the oil off the birds, Charles, but we also need to stop these fucking oil tankers. We need to stop all of it. And that needs to be done with uniform intensity across the entire British Empire, just like that. We need to, like a light switch, we need to go, right, we are in the dark ages. It is time to restore the fucking light and get to work. And none of us will ever get to work. None of us will ever be able to do anything unless the true story of this industrial scaled accident, this global fucking epoch of terror and chaos and destruction fueled by that substance is firmly brought to an end. It becomes the arena of the damned. You know what I mean? It becomes anything attached to it. This isn't like, oh, we need electric cars, we're a Prius. It's like, fuck, I don't even want a car because it resembles a fucking petrol car too much. I don't want to have, you know, 1 degree of fucking attachment to that fucking monstrous epoch that was not really caused by it was like a global experiment in lunacy driven because, and this is the thing, it's like everyone calls oil like it's canned sunlight, you know, bottled sunlight. And I've done experiments with mirrors and things like that to put multiple sunlight on a tree, and it thrives. But it's like we've got 1,000 suns burning, you know what I mean? And we're not. This is the real. It's like we have the equivalent, you know, in most cities. And it's probably more than this. I need an engineer to actually say it's like we've got 1,000 suns burning. Okay. Yet we can't even horticulturally utilize our own sun to its fullest capacity. That's like where, if you want to talk about intergalactic travel, you know, colonizing Mars, anything like that, right? That's full intergalactic travel, colonizing Mars up the top there, right? Of that's like innovation and mastery of our resources. It's like we're fucking here. We haven't even fucking started walking up the fucking mountain yet, and we're covered in oil, like a fucking pelican on a beach. And there's a big hop up there. We don't even know how to get up the fucking top. Right? That's where we are, covered in this. This is the Al Gore moment, but it's different than what Al Gore said. But it's kind of the same. It's like, oh no, I'm all covered in oil, and all the people around me are covered in oil. All the women will get raped. Oh, I can't even step up on there. What am I going to do? It's like we've got to utilize our own fucking sunlight before we fucking distribute sunlight to run pokey machines. Basically, it's pretty simple. It's the core purpose of every biological species on Earth is to increase biomass and diversity and to slow down entropy against the sun. And everything we've done biologically and horticulturally, which is what we survive off, is on a massively declining, you know, so we're selling We're robbing Peter to pay Paul, as an old fucking way, but constantly in a million different ways. It's not just Peter. We're robbing fucking Peter, Jones, Smithy, fucking Roger, all of them. We're robbing them all blind and beating them and raping their daughters to pay fucking Paul, who is then also then just doing all the same thing. It's fucking stupid. And then at the same time, we're spraying out fucking sunlight to kind of have our moment in the glorious fucking light of social status, which is now just all backfiring, in which the highest level social status doing exactly what people have been doing to get social status and to reinforce social status are now being selectively picked out, cherry picked out to be beaten and fucking, mobbed in the media fucking town square. And so that's all fucking spiraling out of fucking control. It's bad, but it's fixable. But it's like we need to slow the fucking thing down. And it's like we're doing all the wrong things in all the wrong places, and we're not defending the right things. And that all has to do with social status. And so there's only one thing, because the king is the top of our fucking social status. So every fucking day, it's like, I don't want to fucking be any of these things. I don't want to, no way in fucking hell. Especially with the conditions and with what that actually means in an environment where no one even understands what the problem is. It's like, that's terrible. That's a terrible fucking thing. But it needs to be done. So I'll just continue doing this, and it doesn't matter how many fucking aprons William puts on. Does it have how many coffees or how many what the fuck is that about? No, you're not the king of fucking England. Like that. You're not begging for forgiveness in the fucking streets. It's like that. What the fuck is that? Who is keeping this going? We need right now the strongest fucking, most fucking prepared, most fucking dug in, most highest level fucking king that has ever fucking existed. And then we need a parliament to fall underneath that has the fucking balls and the nerve to actually begin the job. And we're doing it not from the top of the pot. We're not in the United States Empire, doing these vast, glorious expeditions into fucking naval fucking superiority. We're not that anymore. And I guess we're a little bit lucky, because it's like, well, that's exactly the opposite to what we need. But they're our allies, so we can't. They're also defending. They're in this slowing down oil. They're doing these things. It's like nobody's perfect in this. But we do need to have the perfect fucking model. And I think that the truest of all things, this is like the perfect model, or close enough to it, is in the past. But with the tools and the knowledge and the resources and the communication abilities of the future. Right? We don't need a new pacified king. We need the old, most ruthless, in drive and commitment, and then filtered through the political lens, through the parliamentary, through the societal lens of a recently triggered out of a slumber fucking population across the world from all ethnicities. This oil spreads everywhere. We take full responsibility for our participation, for our actions that have led to it. And collectively, as those global polluting nations, as the truth of this revelation dawns on them, it's like, there's only one way to go, and it's just slow and steady. And it's like the first thing to do is we need to utilize our received sunlight, not through gizmos and technology, just through biology. That's it, and not in a calm and steady way, not in a ridiculously innovative fucking science fiction way. It's like, no, we don't need to modify we just need to put way more in. We've got millions of people around the world trying to hit the bullseye, on a global distribution concept. It's like we don't need that. We need fucking attrition at every single place. It's like wherever we can grow fucking carbon and nutrient and store biology and increase it with our received sunlight, we need to do that. Not so that we can fuel, Porsches and Lamborghinis, so that we can, prevent the decline of our Earth. There's only one way forward. Yeah, and it's like we do it or we don't. And I guess that's the fucking snapshot that I'll leave there. Because I'm not, otherwise I'm not fucking around. I know how to find a place on Earth to see this thing out. And you won't be able to find me. And if you do try and find me, I'll kill you all. And so it's like, we do it or we don't. That's it. It is far easier to gather up an entire experimental fucking epoch and say that was a bad turn. Clearly indicate what contributed to the bad turn. We even need to settle down a little bit on the othering of, say, communism and stuff. It's like communism is cause and effect. Everything had an influence over another thing. Communism, and this is really they're going to love this. Communism might have worked if it wasn't for the age of oil. There's the argument that communism just was the norm before the age of oil. So it's industrialized communism didn't work. Neither did capitalist communism. Neither did capitalist industrialization. All of it failed. But it's easier to look at oil, and instead of saying, "Oh, oil is this thing that we need. It's this, so we need it." So oil's fucking fucked everything up, and it's caused this situation. And we have a bunch of people, mainly people who have oil and are selling it. And even in them, it's like, we're still going to use oil, but we should lock it the fuck up, and you will elongate your family's wealth for a long, long, long fucking time. That's what anyone responsible would do right now. Anyone who wasn't after short-term gains, the individual fucking thing, if they were thinking 6 generations, they'd be like, this oil, the age of oil is done, and I'm going to sit on this fucking oil and defend it with positive thing. And then it's like, then after 2 generations, you have stable, biodiverse, productive, landscapes and environments, and you have oil is your vault, as your family vault. And then we can all gather around and, chuckle at the days of, the days of old, whatever the fuck it is. But yeah, we have a task in front of us, and you can look at it 2 ways. You can look at it as a catastrophe, as you can sit there and have PTSD about the true revelation of the reality that we've all been living in, or we can positively just look to the past and responsibly, slowly and carefully, just restore the past, but with the new benchmarks of social and moral order, especially to do with women's equality, but not hyper-sexualized, liberal, radical extremism. Back to just, okay, I will listen to you, I think. And that's how evolution works. Small incremental steps. You know what I mean? And it basically, for the next 200 years, we'll go, I will listen to you, but remember what happened. Like that is actually the story of humans. Ah, yes, dear, I will listen to you, but remember what happened. Yeah, I remember. Thank you. And that's actually what men have been doing for the last 80 years, and that's to do with the wars. It's like women have just played that. They're like, oh, if you don't let me do this, I don't remember what you did in the war. Yes, I remember. to and fro, tick tock, grandfather clock. All right, thank you.